Anthony Gillotta here. I am the treasurer for the Democratic Business Council of North Virginia. We have here our series of Meet Your Democratic Candidates in the 7th and 10th. And we're going to start off with our very first candidate, Delegate Michelle Maldonado. She represents the the 20th district, which is part of Prince William County, a city of Manassas and Manassas Park. So, Delegate Maldonado, please give us a little background by yourself.
Wonderful. Well, good morning. Thank you for having me today. And hello, everyone. As was mentioned, I'm Michelle Maldonado, and I am excited to be running for the Congressional District 10 seat. I will say that I always like to start out the conversations with giving context. And the context of this race is it is, you hear us say all the time, this is the most consequential race every time we have an election. But this is super true, especially this year with what's happening at the presidential level and what's happening across our world, as well as our nation and the Commonwealth. So when we drill down to Northern Virginia, we have amazing representatives here representing the bulk of Northern Virginia, and Jerry Connolly and Don Beyer and our beloved Jennifer Wexton. Now, if you look at that and you do what I call the gender math, you can see that Jennifer Wexton and her predecessor, Barbara Comstock, broke the glass ceiling to allow for a woman's voice, a qualified woman to step in, to provide power, influence, insight, world perspective, and experience at the federal table for representing the voices and people of Northern Virginia. So within that context, I think it's really critical for us to look for a qualified woman to fill this seat, because if we don't, we lose that in the Northern Virginia context. Now, we do have our wonderful Abigail Spanberger, but that district really travels south and dips into Prince William County, but is primarily representing Point South. So that's sort of the context of why I think it's important that we look at who's representing these seats and these voices for Northern Virginia. I am a long-time resident of CD10. I am so proud to have been here and not only living here, but also have experience representing portions of the district. And so I think that is incredibly important as well, to have somebody who understands us. And unlike the other candidates, I've lived or worked in almost every segment of CD10 and my almost 40 years here in Virginia. The only places I haven't lived or worked in our district is Fauquier and Rappahannock, but all others I've either worked or lived there. So I think it's really important for us to think about these contexts as we fight for reproductive rights. What better voice than to bring a woman's voice to championing, codifying Roe, protecting our contraceptive care, protecting our environment, protecting workers' rights. There's so much to do there. And I can tell you a little bit about my background, but I just wanted to set context for our conversation today.
Thank you for sharing that, Delegate. And I'm sure those who are political junkies are very aware of the residency with the 10th congressional candidate. So thank you for letting us know you do live there. First question to you is just make it very generic for everyone. Could you outline the key points of your platform and how you believe it addresses the needs concerns of your constituent in the Virginia 10th?
Absolutely. So great question. So I come from a family of educators, a family of folks that represent all branches of the military except the Space Force. So service is something that is really deeply ingrained in my constitution. And when I look and see where are the gap needs that we have at the federal level that are critically important, there's there are four places really, or three places really, and then an add-on that I think that fills a gap need that then will inform what the platform is. And the first is my robust perspective, my 360 perspective around international relations and foreign policy. I have worked over the last several years with the UN Foundation and their international peacekeepers and humanitarian aid workers. And that experience has informed the global stage and the global context, particularly with our areas where we are on fire in various places in the world. No other candidate has that. We do have folks who have military strategy, but military strategy is a sliver portion of full 360 diplomacy. So that's one thing. The second is navigating really polarized places and bringing people together. And that's been informed by my years of work in the last presidential administration, helping to maintain the humanity and the child separation policy at the Arizona border, helping Minneapolis community leaders recover after the murder of George Floyd, and even helping congressional staffers after the attack on Capitol Hill. Who knew that these kinds of things were going to prepare me for federal level, that the level of toxicity and division at the federal level really requires somebody who knows how to navigate extreme MAGA to extreme progressive and everything in between. The third thing that separates me is my deep experience and expertise around AI and new and emerging technology. All we need to do is watch the news or watch Capitol Hill hearings and see that we have a gap need that needs to be filled yesterday with legislators who understand how to do this. I'm a former tech lawyer, have spent lots of time working in this space, stood up our Technology and Innovation Caucus at the General Assembly and our AI work group, and sit on a national steering committee of state legislators around AI issues. So when we look at this as a backdrop for what is needed at the federal level, the platform issues are going to come from this. We have to, as an umbrella approach, really restore belief and trust in government, good government. Our democratic process and institution has been under attack, and people have lost faith. They've lost faith in the system, the process, and the people. So we have to show up and model the way of being in politics that is trustworthy, that is transparent, and that is sort of filled with wise, actionable results. We have to do that at the international level. So one of the platform issues is helping to address and bringing aid and ceasefire and infrastructure rebuilding to the areas in Palestine, while helping to return the hostages and making sure that Israel is safe. But we cannot have famine and a humanitarian crisis that's happening right now. We also have to look at protecting Ukraine, because we know from history, we know from President Putin's personality that he won't stop there. We've got other countries like Belarus and Estonia and surrounding areas that will be gobbled up. And while that's important to us, guess who's watching? China, to see how well we respond to that, for them to figure out what kinds of moves they can make with Taiwan. We also have a huge genocide happening in Sudan, the Republic of Sudan, that most people aren't talking about. And we've got crises in Central and South America and Haiti. So on the international level, that is a place where I'm going to be looking. When you take that and you drop it down to domestic, we have an immigration reform need. I don't look at our immigration challenges as a Republican problem or a Democratic problem. We have had both parties be in majorities, be in minorities, and neither one has addressed this issue fully. It is time for us to do that. Historically, what we have seen is a hyper focus on the southern border and not so much on the northern border. I want to see a cohesive, unified strategy around all borders of the US. Statistically, we know years ago there was some data that showed us that terrorists that come in through the country typically come in through the northern border, but people were still focusing on the southern border, leaving the northern border less protected. So one thing that I want to do to help us with this space, to provide more humane process and procedures for people seeking asylum and seeking refuge in the US, is to establish a court under Article 1 of the Constitution. Now, most courts are set up under Article 3 of the Constitution, but Article 1 courts are different. They're the bankruptcy courts. They're the courts for veterans' claims. They are specialty courts. We have over 3 million cases backlog in immigration cases. We have not enough immigration judges, not enough support staff. So establishing an immigration court under Article 1 is going to be critical for us as a nation to help put this into place and define language access and other things that are wraparound services, and that have receiving centers that are more humane as we have quicker disposition of people coming into the country. The other piece is around the technology and how we have to protect this country while also allowing it to be innovative and competitive. Now, the AI is not new. A lot of people are talking about it because it's evolved and it's generative, and we've got these things called large language models, and we've got other things that are amping up its ability to do all kinds of things that we are used to just seeing on TV. And so this piece spans across everything from mental health to medical records to education to national security. AI and technology is a horizontal. It touches everything. So putting things in place that look at the algorithms and the policies that are that need to be legislated to protect folks while still allowing for transparency, trustworthiness, and ethical use of AI and related technologies. Um, I also, I think many of us are hyper focused on protecting reproductive rights and contraceptive care. So absolutely want to codify Roe and put in legislation also that protects contraceptive care. It is so unacceptable that my nieces, my friends' daughters, I have a son, so I don't have girls, but that this generation would have fewer generations than I did, that the generation after me has fewer. That's just unacceptable. The same with Voting Rights Act. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 was gutted, just as Roe was gutted. Those things have to be protected day one. And people ask which is more important. And I say it's kind of like the chicken or the egg, but if you don't have the right people and the right voting access, you can't put the people in to protect the reproductive rights. If you don't have reproductive rights, people lose hope, and it starts to impact people's inspiration and motivation to vote. Environment and climate, critically important. There is no planet B. The fact that this is not an alarm bell ringing for every single person in the world, let alone the Commonwealth, is incredible to me. We have to make sure with respect to climate, changing sea levels and temperatures, environmental impact, people have to understand that this not only impacts the the weather we experience every day, but it will also impact things like food sources. It will impact immigration patterns. It will impact work and workforce development. It impacts a lot of things. It impacts our quality of water and whether we have enough water. I did for some time worked in the Flint, Michigan community following the water crisis. When water dries up or water is contaminated, these are natural 100% solutions and things that we need in the body and in our communities to survive. Um, Education is also important. I come from an educator family. My grandmother was the first Black principal and teacher in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and my grandfather was an instructor for the Tuskegee Airmen, and my parents were teachers and professors and principals. And so when we look at education, the way we are educating our children is based off an agrarian system, an agrarian calendar when we were a farming nation. And there are much more improvements, whether we're looking at how technology is used in the classroom, how AI is a disruptor of the education instructional models we've used historically. We got some things to do. Um, and then I will say two other things that are critically important is around protecting our communities from gun violence and firearm safety and community safety, making sure that we ban assault weapons. We heard last year that even Senator Mark Warner noted recently that he wished he had voted differently after Sandy Hook around banning firearm assault weapons. If Congress had taken action after Sandy Hook, who knows what would have taken place in the last several years around mass shootings. So we need to make sure that we're working in a place that helps us protect our children, protects people who go to the grocery store, who go to the gas station, who go to schools. Um, and that's under the umbrella of our consumer protection. I was so excited. I work across the aisle. I passed the most bills this session in the House Democratic Caucus and the most number of bills unanimously in the House itself. But a lot of my bills focus on consumer protection. I passed a law that protected our seniors. This is another area where we have to make sure that our seniors are protected from scams, elder financial exploitation, scamming out of homes. I passed a law that helped protect homeowners from unscrupulous brokerage firms that were accessing people's home values and eventually taking some of the homes if they were not able to pay. And protecting our kids online. We have a online Child Data Privacy Act that will be the first in Virginia if the governor signs it. I think he has until tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. to see if he's going to sign it. Um, so those are some of the things when we look at the economy and jobs, all of the things I'm talking about, you can see they intersect with workforce and workforce development. and housing. All these things are not separate, they come together and they influence one another. And so I want to make sure that we are taking care of those places and spaces too. And as somebody who experienced housing insecurity and food insecurity as a child, housing, attainable housing, affordable housing, workforce housing, we have to reimagine how we do that as well.
Thank you for sharing. Every time you speak, you always impress me with your plethora of knowledge on various topics from economic development to climate to my background, my bread and butter, national security. So thank you for sharing. The next question is speaking of priorities. In a district as diverse as the 10th, there are often competing interests and challenge. How do you plan on balancing the various economic needs and priorities of your district?
That's a good question. So, the district, for those who may not know, is comprised of Loudoun County, which makes up 54 to 55%, depending if you round up. We've got sort of the two cities of Manassas Park, and Prince William County that make up another 43% or so, 44% of the district. And then rounding out to get to 100 is a portion of Fairfax County, all of Rappahannock, and all of Fauquier. Now, if you're familiar with that sort of geographic spread, you know that we have very rural communities and farming communities mixed in with ex-urban communities. So, and also that runs the socioeconomic spectrum of income and as well as education. So we have folks who need workforce development. We have folks who need assistance, technical assistance with farming and developing their farms. There was about a year or so ago, I had a farmers roundtable with folks and was speaking with them. And the thing that I learned, uh, many of the things we already know that some of the challenges farmers have, but young and new farmers in particular need need specific technical assistance about how to run a farm, how to grow a farm, how to start a farm, and how to maintain that. So we want to make sure that we are providing that for that segment of our population. In the rural communities, what is uh, common across CD10 is the need for teachers for acquisition, for retention. But in rural communities, it's even particularly difficult to attract teachers to stay, to go there and to stay there. So we have to put incentives into place. And then we also have to put, once we get teachers in place, we have to provide the resources to help them be successful to stay and to grow. And the same is true of healthcare. Healthcare, affordable healthcare, accessible healthcare, is something that we need all across the district. But again, these issues are horizontals, but they show up differently in different parts of the community. We need to have, incentives to help our medical professionals come to and stay in our rural communities as well. So I think that what we will see is that some things that we say are competing interests, they actually might just be the same issue showing up differently across the district. So I give an examples of healthcare and education is one of them. The other thing is around the economy, sort of small businesses. Small business is the backbone of not just Virginia's economy, but the nation's economy. And so one of the things I want to look at to help level the playing field, to help people have the appropriate resourcing, is to look at the SBA loan program and see if we can modify that a little for two things. One, making sure that our immigrant communities who have come in, who have become good citizens of our nation, who are looking to do work and contribute in healthy ways, have access to capital. But that's all small business owners, but there are pockets where we don't see enough access to capital. Another place that I would like to see is that returning citizens who have paid their debt to society have access to capital to SBA loans. Currently, they do not. And we have this issue around sort of criminal justice and criminal justice reform that if you have paid your debt to society when you come out, they're often still paying their debt because they can't get work, because nobody wants to hire somebody who's been in prison or jail. Nobody wants to sort of take that leap and trust. And so we have to begin to also put enough things in place that allows for our small business economy to flourish for everyone. So I want to see that as well. The other thing that I think helps, if you look at Northern Virginia, we have such a high percentage of people who are government employees or government contractors. And one thing I want to do specifically is look at the PPP infrastructure. So many things went wrong during COVID, but some infrastructure things were put into place that can be evolved to work well and to the benefit of Virginians. And one of the things I want to look at is how do we leverage that system so that when the government shuts down, not just federal employees, but federal contractors are also protected from pay disruption or interruption by using a similar process, just the way Medicaid is not interrupted when the government shuts down. Banks already know payroll because companies use bank for payroll. Whereas in the COVID one, we had to kind of submit uh, what we thought our payroll was, and there was no. But there's an easier, I think, way to dig in to make sure that our families who support the running of our Commonwealth and the nation can continue to put food on the table and pay for the roof over their heads. So I think those are some of the things I want to do, and also continue the good work around prescription drug affordability. We have an aging population, and in this country, the birth rates, we have to look at that in relation to our aging population, and they're not as high. The birth rates aren't as high as they used to be. So we're starting to see an aging population with different kinds of healthcare needs, and we should not have people who are what we call the sandwich generation, who are taking care of children while at the same time taking care of aging parents and having to figure out how do I cover that care for both, and particularly if there are daily medications, life-saving medications that are required as part of that.
Okay, Michelle, that's pretty good. Actually, you did answer two of my questions. The infrastructure playing into our economy and also small business. Just because you are a entrepreneur in your small business mindset. Question for you is, um, just for sake of times, we have 8 minutes left. As early voting already started in Virginia, ends on June 18th. That's when the primary ends. Finally, as voters as voters consider their choices, what would you like them to know about you?
I love this question. I love ending on this question. What I will say is that everybody that's running believes in the Democratic platform. So you're not going to find huge variations between, whether we support protecting climate and the environment or reproductive rights or on gun violence or all these things. We're all going to be pretty solid. The question you have to ask yourself, I think, goes to character and integrity. How are people showing up and how are they relating to people and how do people respond to them? Do not be fooled by the people who have the most money, the most ads on TV, the most endorsements, the most things that are material. Because we have seen just as recently as this week in Maryland, where our candidate, Democratic, who is now Democratic nominee for state Senate, was outraised 10-1 by her opponent. I will say that grassroots and people who are finding ways to connect and are authentic, you have to understand, are people willing to say what needs to be said while balancing the need to be inclusive of all voices? What's happening now and what's happened over the last several cycles of elections is that people are being very manipulated by stoking the flames of fear and anger. Now, there is a lot to be concerned about, but if you notice that people are trying to enrage you, trying to scare you, I think that you should pay attention. There's, like I said, there's a lot to be concerned about, but we have to be very focused. We have to be very balanced, and we have to understand what the dangers are. But we also have to be able to stand in the middle there and be able to hold the space to bring people together while also holding people accountable. My experience allows me to do that from working with Customs and Border Protection folks, from working with the congressional staffers, from working with humanitarian aid workers. I've been in those very polarized, very toxic places, and I know how to bring people together. And the reason people trust me, the reason they trust me is because they know that I will listen, I will not demonize. And it's also the reason why I've had support across Democrats, Republicans, and independents. They know that I am progressive on some issues. They know that I'm conservative on some issues and moderate on some issues. But they also know that I'll listen to their perspective and I will find a place for us to start to build common ground and get things done.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I'm looking at now there are any questions from the audience. Otherwise, the floor is still yours, Michelle. We got 4 minutes left. If there's nothing else, thank you for your time. I appreciate you. You actually the first candidate in the seventh or 10th. So thank you for setting the bar and the standard for the future candidates forum.
Well, thank you for having me. Everybody remember, vote, vote early if you can, and always bring people with you. So thanks so much.
You're welcome. Right. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.